This one. I'm going to teach you how to grow your own salad. You're going to meet my daughter, and we're going to make some patriotic gardens. And then you and I are going to have a talk about the birds and the bees. Hi, I'm Josh Schneider. Welcome to The First Time Gardener. Today we're going to talk about special gardens, and I'm standing in a very special place. It's a field of birds of paradise. I mean, there's even a field of pineapples up above. What a great place. But not every special garden has to be this grandiose. It just has to mean something to you. In fact, we're going to talk today about gardening with your kids. We're also going to make a salad garden so you can go out and trim yourself lunch. And we're going to talk about building gardens that attract birds and butterflies. We're also going to make a fabulous living wreath, a work of art that's so gorgeous you can hang it on your front door. Special gardens are a little bit unusual and a lot of fun, so let's get going. The succulent garden is such a special garden, and wreaths are a circle of life. It sort of encompasses everything in my garden, and they're easy to make, and I'm going to show you how today. Just a few easy steps. You start out with the wire frame, which you can buy. You could weld it yourself, but that might be a little complicated. You take the wire, it's a heavy gauge metal, and you set it in a bed of the woodland grain moss, which you can buy at a garden center or a home improvement store. You wet it down and you lay it, you sort of sprinkle it out in a mat in a circular area, and then you lay the frame inside. You take potting soil that you've literally soaked with water that's just sopping wet, and I'm going to pull the soil away. And then what we do is we wrap the moss around, and we want the moss to be fairly thick and tight. And what we've done here, and we've started the process already, is used copper wire, a roll of copper wire. And you don't want to pull it too tight or it'll break, but you wrap the copper wire around, and you want the wires spaced about 1 inch as you go. Now, this is not a fast project, but it's a fun all-day project with the kids. Or instead of hitting your therapy session, this is my therapy. And you keep wrapping it, and you keep holding the moss around, and you want to totally cover the soil with moss. It's really pretty easy, but it takes a little bit of time, and you have to be patient. We learn patience in the garden. And so you're gonna wrap it, and you're just gonna keep going around and around and around until, magically, we have one that's already done. Now this is another important element. It's some tweezers, and this will help us get the little succulent cuttings into the moss. So here, once we get that done, you wrap it up and you go around a couple times because you want to make sure that the copper wire is holding it there. And then here we've got one that's started already, and it's what we do is we're going to take these cuttings, you poke a hole in the wreath, and then you poke the cutting down in using the tweezers and pull it out. I'll show you again. On the jade, you want to pick off the bottom leaves of the succulents so that it gets down in deeper. And these little cuttings will actually root because the succulent will make its own roots. Even if you just break it off and leave it lying on a table, it'll grow its own roots automatically into the soil. So succulents are amazing. They form at the bottom what's called a callus. It's sort of a scab that the roots come out from. So when you poke the little cuttings down in to the wreath frame, you want to get them down in there so they hold tight, and then you just gently hold onto it and pull it out. And you just keep doing this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Told you it was a therapy session. We're going to push this down in. And you don't want to push too hard on them from the top or it'll break them apart. But they will root, and it's good to get them in. The advantage of getting them in, and you want, when you do the wreath, if it's a little bit on the dry side, it's actually good when you're putting them in, because then you moisten it, and it'll be fantastic because the moss expands and it grabs onto them, so none of the bits fall out. Because some of them will be a little bit, some of them will fall out. It'll be okay. It doesn't mean you're a failure if some of your cuttings fall out. But you stick it down in there. The idea is to get the cutting in towards the soil. And when you put the tweezers in, you sort of ring them around in a circle like that, and it makes the hole bigger. And you grab. So one of the things I like is all the different colors and the different shapes and sizes. You can also do these with herbs. You can do it with impatiens or petunias, and even like pansies or violas, little miniature violets, do beautifully in a wreath. But my personal favorite is the succulent. And let's look at the finished wreath closely again, because I think it's really spectacular. And we'll look at the back so you can see the mechanics of it. The cuttings are all the way down, and we've got this wire thing tied in here so we can hang it up. But it's only about the top half of the wreath that's planted. But you just keep going around and around and alternating the different shapes and sizes. There are little sedums in here, and little aeoniums, and other sedums, and echeverias, all sorts of interesting and beautiful succulents. And the way to water this, honestly, the easiest way is to take a garbage can lid, turn it upside down and fill it with water, plop this down in it and let it set for about an hour, and it will soak that water up just like a sponge. And when you do that, especially after you finish planting, and this one needs a little more work, but when we're finished with it, we set it in, or if we're going to carry it to the next day, it's okay. You don't have to get it all done in one day. You can do it with your morning coffee every morning. You set it in there and let it soak up the water, and then the next day it'll be drier, a little drier. But you really only have to water these, depending on your climate, once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on how often it rains. But then the beauty of this one is that it has all sorts of little fuzzy leafed ones and glossy leafed ones and ones that will get red tips, and these change and they're beautiful. So if you want more information on how to make a living wreath for yourself to hang on your door or give as a gift, visit our website at DIYnet.com. and you'll get all the information you could possibly need. One of the things I love about gardening is that I get to play with a lot of great tools. Now, tools have to be useful and not just take up space in the garden shed. I'm going to tell you about some tools that you may not think are garden tools, but they are. A knife and a fork. Now, if you don't know what those are for, I'm not sure that even my show can help you. Paint is a great tool because you can paint pots to match whatever color you need. You plant beautiful flowers into them and create a thematic montage of beauty. Make sure you use non-toxic exterior paint. Cameras are really important for recording your successes and failures in your garden. It's like a photographic journal. It'll keep track of the things that worked and didn't work, so that when you go back to the garden center, you just tell them what you want rather than asking them to remember what did or didn't work for you. It'll help you succeed much faster the following season. Coming up next on The First Time Gardener, a feast for the eyes and the stomach, and a refresher course on the birds and the bees. Really. Next on The First Time Gardener. And you want to try something different, how about trying a temperennial? Temperennials are a new class of plant. It's sort of a hybrid from the word temporary and the word perennial. So it's a temporary perennial that may not be hardy in your zone. It may not go through the winter in your area, but you can use it as a temporary plant, and you may choose to overwinter it in the garage or in a basement. Maybe it lives, maybe you've got to go back to the garden center and buy another one the next year. But these plants will add drama and excitement to the garden and add a whole different dimension because they seem a little bit out of place. It'll draw the eye and attract attention, and that's what these things are all about. Now, you want vegetables, but you're scared because it's hard. Well, I'll tell you what, a vegetable garden doesn't have to be 40 acres, and you don't need 3 mules to take care of it. I guarantee that a little vegetable garden will actually be one that you use. What we've made here is a little salad garden. And I think a little salad garden is great because it gives you a small place to start with. And what I want is for you to have success. And this is how I first had success with vegetable gardening. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to plant this little lavender because I think that you've got to have pretty even where there's practical. And we've got our little practical garden here. So we're planting some lavender because it'll be beautiful. And every time I come out to look at my vegetable garden, I can crush it and smell it, and it'll relax me. Lavender relaxes your body and mind. It's great. Now we've got some nasturtiums here, and nasturtiums are a flower that's in the cress family. The leaves are wonderful, popped off and rolled, a little bit of cream cheese in there, and delicious. And the flowers are also edible because they're in the cress family. They taste a little bit like onions. We've got some leaf lettuces here. So, of course, every good salad has lettuce. We've got a little bit of sage, which is a wonderful hardy perennial that will come back year after year, but you can pick off the ends of it and use it as garnish. Oh, the leaves are beautiful on this. A little tip, you can pop that off and use it as garnish, and you can use it at Thanksgiving when you're making your stuffing. We've got thyme. We all want more thyme, isn't that true? And when you rub it, it smells really nice. And then we've got some vegetables here like broccoli and some squash, bushy squash. And then we've got cabbage here and our tomatoes. And then down at the end, we have another fantastic plant, basil. This is African blue basil. And I love it because the flowers are nice. You can use them as a garnish to a salad. And basil leaves, just a few basil leaves, plucked off, chopped up and put in your salad, diced a little bit, big chunks, or just tear them up like this and drop them in a salad. It adds a little kick to a salad, but you can also make your own pesto, which is, you know, the food of the gods, really. We've edged this with rocks, and it's really not that big of a space, only about 1.5 feet, 2 feet wide by about 7 feet long. So it's just manageable enough. Now, you want to always keep your little bit of kitchen garden near your kitchen, because if it's too far away, you're never going to walk out there and take care of it. If it's something that is close by where you can go and pull the occasional weed, not that your garden would ever have weeds, but should that happen, you could pull it out. It's easy. You can take your scissors along, snip, snip, and so you can have your very own salad. And I think that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I've got my sage and my basil, just a little bit of garnish. You can never have too much pretty. And you know, when it's pretty, it always tastes better. And then we're going to pick off a nasturtium, blow it in case there might be a bug in there, and enjoy it. Nice, salty, oniony, little bit of garlicky flavor. Fantastic. You're welcome to join me if you like. Coming up on The First Time Gardener, we're going to learn how to create a garden that attracts birds, bees, and butterflies too. All this plus a whole lot more on The First Time Gardener. Attracting animals to the garden sometimes scares people. But, you know, not all animals are bad. Sometimes they're beneficial. Now, maybe not everybody wants this guy in their garden, but hey, hummingbirds and butterflies are two of my favorite animals to attract to the garden, and they only do good work in your garden. I mean, what could be prettier than a beautiful flower with what looks like a ruby with wings flying in and feeding off that flower? It's really gorgeous. So what can we do to attract these beautiful insects and beautiful birds into our garden? Now, always remember that butterflies are a sign of a healthy garden. That means you're not using too many chemicals, because butterflies are especially sensitive to chemicals, and so an overuse of chemicals will lead to far fewer butterflies and beneficial insects overall in the garden. Now, this plant, conveniently called butterfly daisy, because it attracts so many butterflies, is great. It's an easy plant to grow. It's fabulous in containers or in the ground. But it attracts butterflies like crazy because just like a fighter jet that comes in and lands on an aircraft carrier, the butterflies can come in and light on this perfect little landing pad. Think of it as a landing pad. Any plant with this shape, a flat surface for them to glide in and land, is what butterflies are looking for. So this butterfly daisy is great. Also, lantana is a favorite of butterflies. They go crazy for this. And it has rough leaves that are kind of scratchy. And the leaves smell kind of funny, so you'll know lantana by the smell of the leaves. But it has beautiful orange, red, and yellow flowers that attract the attention of butterflies like crazy. And it's a great plant, I'm telling you. Easy to grow. Even if you're in a really hot summer area, it will perform well all summer long. Now, another plant that attracts butterflies, and if you look at it, you can tell it's a daisy. Daisies are great. This is a symphony daisy. And it is just an easy plant to grow, and butterflies will be all over it. Now, how about hummingbirds? Sometimes we attract lots of birds to our garden with bird feeders, but you can have a natural hummingbird feeder with these two plants. This is a petunia called supertunia, and it's called supertunia because it grows real fast. So it's a nice, really a nice plant, but it has a trumpet-shaped flower. And the trumpet-shaped flower is what will attract the hummingbirds because their long, needle-thin beak can come in and drink the nectar at the base of the flower. And while it's in there, it gets pollen on its beak, so as it moves around, it pollinates the flower, a beneficial bird. But think of the trumpet shape. You've got to think of the shape. How does the bird want access to the plant? It comes in and takes a drink like with its straw. Now, Calibrachoa is a petunia relative, and it also has a trumpet-shaped flower. And because it has that, the hummingbirds are crazy for it. Now, it has more flowers than does the petunia, so the bird will spend, frankly, a little more time drinking off of this. And so having the butterfly flowers and the hummingbird flowers all in your garden will create this interactive nature place that you can watch and enjoy. In fact, Think about hanging a few of these hanging baskets near your kitchen window. So in the morning when you come downstairs and you're reading your paper and having your first cup of coffee, you can look out and watch the hummingbirds and butterflies having their first cup of coffee too. Coming up on The First Time Gardener, I'm going to make a very special red, white, and blue garden with my daughter when we return to The First Time Gardener.